Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What Lies in the Sunday Telegraph, a supposedly weekly exploration of the lies that the powerful tell you to keep you poor and stupid, which is, of course, the Sunday Telegraph. So, for those who haven't done this before, I'm just going to read the newspaper and give my thoughts on it. Some people seem to like it, and this is for you. I haven't been doing this for the last couple of weeks, just feeling a bit blue in the whole isolation pandemic space, but bad people are trying to do bad things, so we must forge ahead. On that note, it's a special Mother's Day edition, and I would like to wish a special Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. It is, of course, a confection of an American card company, but, I'm all for recognising mothers and then fathers and never really get a day for childless people, do we? But I guess every Sunday's a lie-in for them. Also we have lockdown lifted, isolation rules relaxed on Friday. So this is for New South Wales on Friday. Permission to mingle. The first stage of lifting strict isolation rules in New South Wales will begin next Friday. The New South Wales government will allow outdoor gatherings of 10, visits to cafes and restaurants, weddings with 10 guests, funerals with 20 mourners, and swimming in outdoor pools. Look forward to how they're going to regulate the showers. The new rules come with a warning to be vigilant about hygiene, and Miranda Wood will report on pages 14 to 15. Also, the NRL's done a big deal with Fox and Nine in a 7-year contract because Foxtel was about to die if it didn't get new content, particularly sports content. People who sign up for sports don't want the movie package and do not want to pay $80 a month to watch it. So, page 2 is habitually mixed picks unless they've sold a good ad contract, which is editor Mick Carroll's selection of the best things that are in his newspaper. He's had all week to prepare this, and invariably, the best things in this newspaper are the things with the highest number of advertisers. But still, his recommendations. Don't miss an incredible Mum's Day edition. I reckon by the time you got to page 2, you're already sold, Mick. I think you've given yourself a bum steer there. Body and Soul is promising to help us lose the corona kilos. I know I've porked up. Jeez. I used to close all the rings on my phone, on my watch, like most days. And these days, if I get one ring closed, it's celebration. Shane Warne tells us that his mum's the real hero. Well, she did give him the pill, didn't she? We've got the travel section. Food destinations to dream about in lockdown. I do not know how long they're going to continue printing that. I guess they've got long-term contracts. The Watch magazine has got something with Mark Ruffalo in it. I only said Bruce Ruffalo because, Bruce Banner. But anyway. With the greatest movie mothers of all time, they're leading with Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, which is a really grim reference if you think about it or you've even watched the movie. Sure, you're a mother because you got raped while you're in a coma and gave birth in a coma. Second chance suburbs inside the communities, bulldozing public housing and regenerating. That's a horrible story. That's celebration of gentrification. Ugh. Real estate is back. Jonathan Chancellor has all the gossip from week 1 of the return to live auctions. Oh, thank God. Sport and real estate. This nation can breathe again. Good sports, the secrets of elite sports mums who are at the top of their games. I think after that we need a coffee, don't we? Right, we need bombers. New Fireys boss reveals battle plan to keep New South Wales safe in first interview. Australia's own waterbombing fleet, fire trucks that don't roll over, and supporting traumatised fireys are top priorities for new Rural 5 Service boss Bob Rogers. Which is funny because New South Wales firefighting fatalities this year were largely because they refused to install roll cages in their trucks, despite it being common practice in the rest of Australia. And yes, I guess if you can have a fire truck that won't roll over in the first place, then that's good. If you design them right with the water tankage at the bottom, then I guess that would add some stability until you run out of water and the centre of gravity shifts, which could be dangerous as well. Maybe rethink the roll cage thing. All right, Mark Geyer tells us he loves his footy. His entire life has been built around it. And there are only 18 more sleeps until the NRL returns from its long coronavirus lockdown. Baboon baby boom is triple treat for Zoo. Mother's Day at Sydney Zoo will be 3 times as special this year as the park celebrates the births of a trio of little girls. First time baboon mum Zuri gave birth to her infant just 2 weeks ago, while Kasmet and Azara's babies were born in the last 2 months. I got to say, baboons are they're wonderful creatures and they entirely deserve their place on God's earth, but even an adult baboon is a bit... You wouldn't call them charismatic macrofauna, would you? Okay, Nine Boss enjoys languid lunch with EA as opponents circle. This is an Annette Sharp page 4 special. She normally doesn't get in the front half of the paper. Nine CEO Hugh Marks and his EA Jane Routledge picnicking at Clifton Gardens last week. Boy, they're really... there's some aspersions going on there. Following a rollercoaster 4 years in the job, some members of Nine Entertainment's board are now pushing openly for the removal of company CEO Hugh Marks. In a week in which Hollywood Hugh Marks addressed Nine investors and indicated the media company is ready to cut ties with embattled long-time sports partner the NRL, Nine insiders spoke about rising panic within the company. Executives and board directors alike have become increasingly concerned about Nine's revised business strategy under Marks, which sees it move away from the free-to-air broadcaster's grassroots television audience and the CEO's lack of attention to long-standing business alliances. Yeah, this is the old firm. Yeah, I mean, Nine does have a very... I mean, it's the Fairfax papers as well, isn't it? Old alliances means the people who've always been on the gravy train getting worried they're about to lose. Sitting side by side with NRL on verge of biggest TV deal, the cash-strapped NRL is just days away from securing a stunning new TV broadcast deal worth up to $2.3 billion, which would be the richest in Australia's sporting history. The Sunday Telegraph can reveal Channel 9 and Fox Sports are on the verge of agreeing to a lucrative deal, which kind of contradicts what's on the other page there. And I guess it's on the verge, so we're talking about a deal that hasn't been done. Could be that this News Limited publication, with its deep links to Foxtel, is trying to buffalo Nine into paying for half of their content. Could be. We've got a drought special report. We're back to that, the bone dry specials. Rain has finally transformed much of western New South Wales. Gumboots and green pastures. This is a terrible drought special. And then they want to build more dams. This is Dungowan near Tamworth. And an expansion of Wyangla Dam near Orange. I mean, dam expansions are generally a better idea in that they're already on proven locations. But now we've got the fact that the wives and girlfriends of NRL players are leading an anti-vax charge, which is violating the agreed biosecurity procedures, but apparently the NRL doesn't have to follow those rules either. And if anyone's wondering why it's important for the football players to have flu shots which don't protect from coronavirus itself, it's because the last thing the contact tracers need is a panic being caused by flu-like symptoms that are actually flu. So if they have the vaccine, the workload it's putting on the public health system if they get the sniffles is considerably less. But stuff it, NRL players' beliefs are much more important. NRL players' Instagram influencer wannabe wives, yet again more important. Shock DNA link. Was sick killer also vicious serial rapist? Ashley Coulston hammed it up as Captain Bathtub, but in reality was a murderer and police believe serial rapist wanted in 2 states. Police have made a DNA match between a notorious triple murderer and an unsolved sex attack investigation in New South Wales. Ashley Mervyn Coulston, 64, is serving 3 consecutive life sentences in a Melbourne prison for the callous murders of 3 university students in the 1990s. Coulston, who made headlines as Captain Bathtub in 1998 when he sailed across the Tasman Sea in a tiny boat, has also been identified as a key suspect in a series of harrowing sex attacks across different states. Well, I imagine there'll be a podcast about that real soon. Alright, Annika Smethurst brings us news from the Eden Monero unedifying bun fight. The National Party might not run a candidate in the federal by-election for Eden Monero after the spectacular exit of Deputy Premier John Barilaro. Allies of Federal Nationals leader Michael McCormack have urged the Deputy Prime Minister not to campaign too strongly in the seat to avoid being blamed for a predicted loss. the National Party decides to enter a candidate in the race for the regional New South Wales seat, party sources believe it will be a low-budget campaign to help the Liberal vote. I don't know, what sort of party are you if you're giving up seats that would otherwise appear to be firmly part of your bailiwick? It seems every page we've got a little I love my footy and how much I missed my footy story. This is by Michael Ennis, who's a Fox League analyst. So he's got a bit of a financial relationship with the return of footy, doesn't he? And we have more Fox League analysts. I don't know how many analysts Fox League actually needs, but I guess there's a lot of games and it takes time. Telling us how much he loves footy. Story about a surfer who punched a shark. The story on how the hunt for sex predators changed the way police deal with crime. And Miranda Wood tells us how Scott Morrison's planning to celebrate Mother's Day. Apparently his mother Marion has been at the lodge here in Canberra throughout the pandemic lockdown. Sydney Rooster James Tedesco has a letter to mums. Boy, we're really hanging a lot of hopes on football, aren't we? And a rugby league in particular, which I wouldn't want to be hanging my hopes on a rugby league player. So page 13, across the page from a Harvey Norman ad, we get the Queen's message of hope on the VE Day anniversary. As I might have said before, I think in a few years' time, we'll possibly after Her Majesty's eventual sad passing, there'll be a movie about this series of speeches, unless the Crown can wedge it in somewhere. It's VE Day, of course, which the White House has celebrated as Britain and America's victory, which leaves out some allies like, I don't know, us, Canada, the Russians who killed 3/4 of all the Nazis who were killed in the war. But sure, on you, Donald. It's not the worst thing you've done this week, but it's a tough field, isn't it? More on coronavirus. The brakes are coming off. Back to beer and Skittles. Push to revive pubs. Now, this is important. Cheaper beer and the return of the long lunch is on the menu as the hospitality sector tries to revive restaurants, pubs and cafes on the other side of the pandemic. Calling for tax changes to allow businesses to write off meals as business expensive. Oh, God, Jesus. Very few of the economic reforms of the 1990s were as important as stopping bosses getting pissed at lunchtime. It's really underestimated how much that improved the decision making. All the deals they did over lunch were terrible for their businesses in the country. I know it's boring having to get analysts in and do due diligence and actually knowing what you're doing, but it's only people's lives at stake. So there's some more news out of Newmarch House. Someone else has died. Why they haven't just shut the facility down and relocated the residents into healthcare facilities is something that I can only hope a Royal Commission is going to look into in the future. It's hammer time. Buyers rush back as live house auctions return. Now, I see here a gathering of far more than 10 people, and I do not see appropriate distancing being maintained. So I hope this gets shut down right away. Sue Dunlevy has a medical story. She's not reading out a pharmaceutical company's press release today, so that's unusual. What infection does to your body? COVID-19 has left some paralysed, others with brain problems or organ failure, and full recovery can take as long as a year. Well, that seems unlikely that you could know that, doesn't it, given that the virus only emerged in December. So there's no longitudinal study on how long it takes, but, I mean, sure, can take as... No, can is wrong, could. I couldn't argue with could, but we've got a can here. Domestic violence rates are stable. I put it to you, domestic violence reporting rates are stable. I don't know for sure what's happening out there in that unfortunate sector of the world, but yeah. Okay, seniors are asking to be locked up. Australians in aged care and their families want nursing homes to keep strict visiting guidelines. Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying, the thought that randos can be wandering in, traipsing a virus around in a vulnerable community where it spreads like wildfire. Jane Hansen tells us our life is now a corona coaster. That is the headline, to be fair to Jane. It was probably written by a callow sub-editor. Noting that Australia's pandemic lockdown is having an unprecedented effect on our mental health. So hands up who's had raging anxiety for the last 2 months and blood pressure through the roof. Not helped by endless Zoom meetings with colleagues, eh? In no way should that be taken as a criticism of my colleagues. This is just a reflection on the condition we all find ourselves in. Prepare to feel pain as virus blows out wait lists. Yeah, I mean, the flow-on effects are going to be awful. Apparently there's a problem with getting new blood donations because the anticoagulants the blood donors need aren't available. There's a lot of little supply chain stuff starting to break down now as inventories run down and things haven't arrived in a while. Fear-driven traffic jams. Traffic could be worse than before the COVID-19 pandemic as people feel safer in cars and catching trains and buses. Yeah. It's going to be a thing. On the other hand, I think a lot of people stay working from home at least until stage 3, which is June. Right, fast food marketing ploys are bad taste, says Jane Hansen. The fast food industry has been accused of using marketing strategies to cash in on the pandemic lockdown. Domino's Australia is promoting 5 reasons to eat pizza. I mean, it's just marketing. Oh, we've also got a page of Foxtel advertising there now. Australia's home of HBO. Interesting Game of Thrones is in the second row, in the middle of the page, mind you. Ooh, The Wire. I should probably finally watch that. I know. It's been hard to find on a streaming service, to be honest. There it is. It's finally available. Freaky tragedy. Last horror moments of teacher tied up in farm. Private school teacher Anthony Stott's family feared he was on drugs before he woke, shaking from a wild nightmare of the death before his bizarre and tragic death. I don't know if his being a private teacher was worth mentioning, but anyway, I guess it's a bit posher, isn't it? New court documents have revealed the strange meltdown of the respected French teacher at Brisbane St Peter's Lutheran College seemingly suffered before police allege he was kidnapped and tied to a chair at a northern New South Wales farmhouse, bashed with golf clubs, and then fatally struck by a semi-trailer on the M1 freeway. Wow. Fellow passengers on a Tiger Air flight, the 43-year-old caught from Sydney to Brisbane, claimed he was masturbating in his seat, talking to voices in his head, chanting, praying and yelling obscenities. Whew. Moving on, editor, broadcaster, raconteur and writer Frank Crook dies. A raconteur and person of great substance is how colleagues have remembered veteran journalist and broadcaster Frank Crook, who passed away on Friday, aged 81. Former editor of TV Week, ABC radio announcer and cricket writer for the now-defunct Sun and Daily Mirror newspapers, Crook suffered a heart attack at Circular Quay and died soon after in St Vincent's Hospital. Well, that's a bit sad. Right, we've got Shane Warne talking about how his mum's his true hero, remembering, of course, that he dropped her in it when he failed a performance-enhancing drug test. Well, failed the test for the masking agents, which he said was a diuretic his mum gave him to help him lose weight, because that's what mums do, isn't it? In big news for people who have children in Year 12 this year in New South Wales, Year 12 students will have extra chances to meet new minimum standards for literacy and numeracy in recognition of the disruption this year. So they'll be allowed to attempt 6 online tests instead of the usual 2. It's going to do weird things to the cohort numbers, isn't it? Okay, The Source, political gossip with Annika and Linda. Backroom block on Barra. Nationals leader John Barilaro could have had a clear run in Eden Monaro, with senior Liberals having been working on a deal not to put up a candidate in exchange for an unopposed run elsewhere. So apparently Jim Molan realised he couldn't win, and Andrew Constance didn't have the support of his branches, and Barilaro thought Constance had been talking to McCormick, and everyone's blaming Alex Hawke, which, blaming Alex Hawke is a good policy setting at any moment. Apparently this is the only political gossip going on this week, as we hear it was a very quiet coalition Zoom party room meeting on Friday. Interesting if they're using Zoom for that, because a lot of people are saying it shouldn't be used for confidential work. I personally think the risks are pretty low. Still on Zoom, the home furnishing of Zoom MPs have become a key talking point within the coalition, especially Liberal MP Adam Crouch, who fronts sessions with a picture of the Queen in the background. Anthony Roberts has personally signed framed photographs of Prince Philip, John Howard and Margaret Thatcher, and Alastair Henskins has a floor-to-ceiling collection of law books as his backdrop. One MP yesterday accused the senior council barrister of auditioning for the role of Attorney General. He is not sitting there by accident, the MP said. Oh, Jesus. While the New South Wales Liberals were scrambling on Friday to finalise nominations for Eden Monaro after gaining and losing a candidate in less than 24 hours, the mood over at the Nationals head office was decidedly calm. I'm about to go and play golf, Andrew Fraser told The Source when we called the veteran former MP, asked if the party would be putting up a candidate. Fraser said this will be decided in due course. Okay, so Australia's number one podcast, we're now told, is Gary Jubilin's Eye Catch Killers, and we've got a page 25 promoting that. Also an ad for the Spirit of the Anzacs. Traps to be laid for snowy brumbies. That's brumbies in Kosciuszko National Park. I mean, I love wild horses as much as anyone, but, you know, they're doing horrific damage to the natural wildlife and the sphagnum bogs. Yeah, they just shouldn't be there. Ancient diets are best to bolster new mothers' moods. Diets filled with herbs and spices and derived from ancient cultures could be the key to keeping the new baby blues at bay. Diet high in herbs, spices, fruits, veggies, fish, grains, and legumes. Yeah, that sounds like a good diet, doesn't it? 80% of the country's animal sanctuaries and wildlife parks are not eligible for the federal government's emergency funding package to help them survive the lockdown. Yeah, I think there's a lot of bureaucracies out there that need to get it through their heads that the purpose of this money is for it to flow, and it doesn't matter if someone gets a bit more money than you'd otherwise want them to get, because it's all getting pumped back into the local economy at this point. The snitch is pursuing Salim Mahaja because, you know, brown people's crimes are always more interesting than white people's crimes. He's found himself in strife yet again, this time for allegedly falsifying an affidavit with the signature of his ex-lawyer. That's Zali Burrows, who certainly improved her profile with her association with Salim. Police have charged Western Sydney lawyer Hassan Halak with attempting to pervert the course of justice, and he's due to face court in July. The allegations stem from an incident in November when an Uber driver was allegedly bashed by two brothers from the Maryland's Al-Medine family, Rafat and Hamidi, according to documents tendered in court. The Uber driver reported the matter to police and the brothers were charged. Police allege in the documents that another man entered the fray, Masood Zakaria. God, this is complicated. Right, so police alleged Halak told the police the Uber driver was his client and no longer wanted to give a statement against the Alameddines because they had been wrongly accused. Police went the other way and charged the lawyer and Zakaria with perverting the course of justice, alleging he had been part of a plot to have the victim retract his statement. Alright, so we'll get PTSD licked is the story, because there's a support dog, Leon, who looks like a good dog. I know you lot all like get nice pictures of dogs. There he is. I mean, support dogs are nice. I'm not sure you can just drop off a dog and say mission accomplished for something as complex and difficult as PTSD. Now, here's a sign of the world's changed. Double page ad. Whoa! Oh, look at all that yellow. And it's for Marley Spoon. Place the order, the ingredients arrive, and you cook it yourself with all the time you've got because you're trapped in your house all the time. I think they've missed the boat on that, frankly. I don't know, because I haven't done this show for 2 weeks. Yeah, I would have been... They wanted to get in with that a little earlier, I would have thought, but I guess cooking's the new black, isn't it? Page 32 and 33 are literal motherhood statements. Your hugs fix everything. A whole 2 pages of people saying how much they love their mums. Wraparound of sport is more I love my mum. Okay, the fight over vaccinations goes on. The Players Union director is now slamming the vaccination holdouts, as he should. Or they should just stand them down. The game can continue without that handful of players. Right, more on this. It's not an individual sport, it's a team game. Graham's shot at Vax refuses. Warriors say we aren't a club that's going to let the game down. They're really ramping on the pressure, which frankly I think is good to see. There is an issue with the anti-vax stuff that Bryce Cartwright's got no particular excuses. Some of the Polynesian players, though, the history of white people putting needles into people that they colonise is not a glorious one, and there are some very legitimate historic reasons for those people to be very concerned about this sort of thing. But if they don't want to play, don't have the jab, go find some other work. Right, Vlandis is going to wield a big financial axe. He wants 50 million in costs pulled out of the game. Doesn't want any job losses, but wants to cut 50 million. I wonder how he's going to do that. Somehow they've still managed to print page after page of sport. Horse racing, of course, is too important to the state's coffers to have shut down. TV Guide, some sort of Chemist Warehouse special. Oh, look at the size of that. It's basically a cheap way to deliver junk mail, I suspect. Escape Magazine's talking about our next holidays to Vietnam, which going to be a while on that one, I reckon. So the dog racing is telling us that all pooches deserve a good life. Yeah, they do. They shouldn't be tortured by greyhound races. That's such hypocritical bullshit. Mums are good sports and best friends. I'm so glad I got a newspaper to tell me all these things about motherhood that I otherwise wouldn't have known. Okay, who'll win the Veep Stakes? November's presidential election will be historic for many reasons, reports US correspondent Sarah Blake. Who would have thought a US presidential election would be historic for many reasons, particularly in a pandemic that is literally destroying the foundations of the nation as a nation, as the states form their own blocks to try and bypass the failed federal government with a looter running the whole thing. Right, the invasion of Venezuela that was done to try and make a Netflix documentary. That actually happened in the last couple of weeks. Trump says it's not an invasion. Venezuela has charged 2 former US soldiers with terrorism and conspiracy for allegedly taking part in a failed bid to topple the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. This thing was up there with the Bay of Pigs and would have been front page news any other month. The tiny town that's doing it worse than New York, this is in the Navajo Nation. Their death rate is quite low, though, which indicates they're doing some things right. I suspect it's just they've actually got good testing, but anyway. All right, Tirana, mess of corruption. Albanian prosecutors have charged 20 former judges and prosecutors with abuse of post-deceit and hiding illegally owned property or income. This is one of these Eastern Europeans' weird and corrupt stories that we seem to get more of. It's that great spectrum as you move from England eastward across the world, isn't it? Yes, so the good news, in a way, I guess, is in Georgia, the killers of Ahmed Arbery have finally been charged with murder after, anti-heroic attempts by their former colleagues in the justice system to try and avoid prosecuting them. It's terrifying what can come out if the video is available, isn't it? And what will never be seen. So Elise, who is Elise Knowles, and her boyfriend have bought a Byron Bay property, and I suspect this is getting coverage because she's wearing a bikini in a picture. Good for her, I guess. Cronulla Real Estate, high-rise developments selling well, apparently. Okay, now we turn to Peter Credlin, who tells us that we're halfway to winning, which is a bit of a rah-rah for the Prime Minister, and you know what? You've got to admit that thankfully he has listened to the experts and, for the most part, aside from the weird school spat, done a moderately good job, although we're now sort of at the phase where we need to admit not everything has gone perfectly, and you know, like I say, arts sector isn't really geared up to receive support in a way that support's being given, and obviously apparently the zoos have an issue. Peter's giving a thumbs up to Drew Pavlou, the student exposing the University of Queensland's sycophancy to communist China and now threatened with disciplinary action. There's a little culture war fight no one cares about. And thumbs down to the highly paid rugby league players who can't even do what the kindergartners do. Kidner kids do. No jab, no play. I hate it when I agree with Peter Credlin. Peter's having a grump about funeral restrictions, which, you know, they're for a reason, and you just saluted the PM for it. So opinion pages now. David Pemberthy's sallying forth to have a go at Barnaby Joyce for not downloading the app, the COVID Trace app. If anyone cares to know, yeah, I've downloaded it. I have reservations, but I think it's value. And yes, teething problems, but given that they haven't legislated it yet, they're working on it, you know, is worthwhile. And if that's the price we pay to be able to move freely in a COVID era, then that's could be worse. I know a lot of people are going to get narky about that view, but oh well. Peter Gleeson's trying to say Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews will be punished at the ballot box for his inability to read the mood in Victoria. Trying to impersonate Kim Jong-un is not the Australian way. You know what? All over the world, the vast majority, and we're talking, you know, 75 to 80% of people want tougher restrictions than any government's bringing in. And, you know, basically it's a small number of News Corp columnists who are trying to protect Rupert's business model, trying to bully the government back into a murderous strategy. And I hope, anyway, I'm not going to even say what I hope happens to Peter Gleeson. Piers Ackerman says we're beating the virus despite the bungling of our state governments. Don't fall for the line that Australia's handled the Wuhan corona. Anyone who says the Wuhan coronavirus is a raging racist. It's an easy freaking marker right now. Also, anyone who calls the Chinese government the communist Chinese government, because we need to be scared of them even more because they're communists as opposed to just a really powerful government. So Piers is blaming Ruby Princess on New South Wales. Oh, and Newmarch House. Aha. Oddly enough, there's a lot. Aged care is a federal responsibility, not a state one. And Ruby Princess, to me, looked a hell of a lot like a Home Affairs intervention, not a New South Wales health one. But sure, Piers, spread more rubbish. Lucy Khan says, I'd rather be burning dinner than my bra. And she says the virus-induced rewind of feminism is possibly a good thing. Oh, stop it, Lucy. So Warren's cartoon is a rugby league player being dragged by his ear to a flu vaccination. We're revisiting the Colston murder in the 80s as the lead editorial item, and then it's all in honour of mums, so we don't have anything to say about news. The lead letter to the editor is on China's dictators, so... Classifieds is a weird little story sitting on its own in a very small type, saying not all heroes wear capes. Yeah, well done. Just a little bit more, show people you love them on Mother's Day. We got more stuff on how great Mother's Day is. Who'd have thought? Some stuff about delivery boxes that they think are good. East 33 oysters. You know, I reckon I'd go to the fish market rather than a restaurant for my oysters, but it's just me. Okay, Duncan Lay tells us that coming soon, Harry Potter by Jar Jar Binks. Saying, I love that celebrities are taking turns to read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone aloud for fans to enjoy, even though America still struggles with the idea of the legendary Philosopher's Stone and insists on calling it the Sorcerer's Stone instead. Obviously, there are parts of the US where philosophy is all Greek to them, which is, given that most of the great philosophers of the last 50 years have come out of North America. Anyway. Okay, I have to ask, who invited David Beckham to read a chapter? The man looks like a Greek god, but sounds like a Punch and Judy puppet. Yeah, David Beckham's got a funny, squeaky voice. Not an unknown phenomenon, Duncan, but I'm glad it's kept you in salary a little longer. Annette Sharp is worried about the distress that Jessica Murray is suffering. What can be done when repeat rehab fails? Probably not write stories about them in your newspaper and let them sort it out themselves. James Weir notes that creative spirits are responding to COVID in novel ways. Kerry Parnell says, good news, wrinkles are finally in style, because British Vogue put Judi Dench on the cover. Sure, Kerry. Yeah. They're in style if you're Judi Dench. Judi Dench is pretty cool and has been for a long time. Dame Judi to us, but you know. The Hibernation Book Club has more on someone by Adele Parks, who's written a 20th novel called Just My Luck. Cameron Daddo has returned to Australian screens after 20 years. Apparently that's news. So Hugo Weaving's in a movie called Hearts and Bones that gets 4 stars. It's out on digital release. Another movie called The Half of It also gets 4 stars. Either the marking's gotten easier or there's a lot of good stuff coming out. More stuff on Hugo Weaving's movie. I'm losing my mind. Right, and the best movie mums of all time. So we've got Uma Thurman, Sarah Connor. I don't think Sarah Connor was that good a mum. I realised she was under difficult circumstances with Terminators coming at her. The saddest movie mother of all time is Bambi's mother in Bambi. Well, there's a controversial view, isn't it? And a back page devoted to the mums. So, you know, happy Mother's Day, everyone. I hope the world is a happier and brighter place in weeks to come, but I suspect the economic tsunami bearing down on us is going to sweep away a lot of things we love, and I'm sorry to end on that gloomy note. But I think we need to start getting ready for that. Okay, folks, I will be back next week. See you then.